From the attacks of September 11th to the Donald Trump presidency, stay tuned to number 1 to find out 10 of the most famous predictions of Nostradamus. Number 10. September 11th. Did Nostradamus really predict 9/11? People think so, and quoted the following. 2 still birds will fall from the sky on the Metropolis. The sky will burn at 45 degrees latitude. Fire approaches the great new city. Immediately a huge scattered flame leaps up. Within months, rivers will flow with blood. The undead will roam the earth for a little time. These lines circulated widely following the tragedy at the World Trade Center towers. However, Nostradamus didn't write that prophecy. It's a hybrid of real writings from Nostradamus and pure fiction. The first telling factor is that it isn't in a quatrain, which is how he phrased all of his prophecies. The second is the term steel birds. Steel suitable for airplanes wasn't invented until 2 centuries after Nostradamus. A real quatrain of the psychic that is sometimes attributed to September 11th reads, "Earth-shaking flames from the world's center roar, and makes the earth around a new city quiver. 2 great rocks will roar for a long time. Then Arethusa will redden a new river." Peter Lemay-Shurrier, a former Cambridge linguist and author of nearly a dozen books on Nostradamus, points out that the original phrase for new city is cité nouvelle. The phrase can refer to any city with new in its name. He also points out that Nostradamus clearly says the flames will rise from the earth, which means it can't refer to September 11th. Number 9. The Kennedy Assassinations. The great man will be struck down in the day by a thunderbolt, an evil deed foretold by the bearer of a petition. According to the prediction, another falls at nighttime, conflict at Rheims, London, and a pestilence in Tuscany. Some point to this quatrain as a prophecy foretelling the assassination of John F. Kennedy and his brother Bobby Kennedy. JFK, considered a great man, was killed during the day. Bobby was assassinated 5 years later, shortly after midnight. In this scenario, the gun is the thunderbolt. The world mourning is supposedly the conflict, though no one seems to know what a pestilence in Tuscany is supposed to mean. Number 8. The Challenger Explosion. From the human flock, 9 will be sent away, separated from judgment and council. Their fate will be sealed on departure. Kappa, Theta, Lambda, the banished dead heir. Before we learn about the meaning of this prediction, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Zero to Hero. Really, it was foretold by Nostradamus that you should do this. Supposedly, this quatrain foretells the explosion of the Challenger space shuttle on January 28, 1986. All the astronauts on board were killed. However, believers ignore a key fact. 7 astronauts died in the explosion, not 9. As far as Kappa, Theta, and Lambda are concerned, some try to rearrange those letters to fit the name of the company that made the defective O-ring that led to the explosion. Another version of this quatrain differs in the last 2 lines. This version reads, 9 will be set apart from the human flock, separated from judgment and council. Their fate to be determined on departure, great blame, to the other great praise. Believers say that Nostradamus got it right, except for the number of the astronauts. Those receiving great praise could be the Russians because, at the time, they held the record for the longest person in space. Number 7. Death of Henry II. The young lion will overcome the older one. On the field of combat in a single battle, he will pierce his eyes through a golden cage. 2 wounds made 1, then he dies a cruel death. We talk a little bit about this prediction in our video 10 Ways Astrology Affects You, so don't forget to check it out next. In the summer of 1559, King Henry II of France faced the Comte de Montgomery in a jousting match. Both of the men carried shields depicting lions. The Comte was 6 years younger than the king, and they made several passes. But in the final pass, the Comte's lance shattered. 2 of the shards entered Henry's helmet, one piercing Henry's eye and lodging it in his head. An infection from the eye spread to his brain, and after 10 days of agony, Henry II died. Nostradamus published this quatrain in 1555. This sounds like chilling proof, but there are still a few problems. In 1558, the French seer wrote Henry a letter. In it, Nostradamus promises the French monarch that he would live a long life. Also, a jousting match is hardly a field of battle, and Henry was not wearing a golden helmet. Furthermore, the prophecy refers to eyes, as in plural, but only one of Henry's eyes was damaged. Number 6. Princess Diana. The quatrain attributed to the death of Princess Diana comes in several versions. One version reads, "The penultimate son of the man with the prophet's name will bring Diana to her day of rest. He will wander far because of a frantic head and delivering a great people from subjection." On August 31, 1997, Princess Diana died in a car crash along with her boyfriend, Dadi Fayed. Dadi Fayed was the eldest son of Muhammad al-Fayed. As anyone familiar with Islam knows, Muhammad is the name of the prophet. That part of the prophecy, at least, fits. However, penultimate means second to last. Dodi was not the second to last child, he was the eldest of 4 other siblings. Also, the prophecy suggests that the penultimate son will live on, wandering because of a frantic head. Dodi died in the crash. Another version of the quatrain says the last son. Again, Dodi doesn't fit. In that same alternate version, the name Diana doesn't even appear. The name Monday appears, and it was still connected to Diana because Monday was once associated with the Roman goddess of the moon, Diana. Following Princess Diana's death, the British public felt angry with Queen Elizabeth II for her apparent lack of support and empathy towards the death of her former daughter-in-law. If people getting angry is the same as being delivered from subjection, then the prophecy was right, but it doesn't seem likely. Number 5. Adolf Hitler. Several of Nostradamus' quatrains are supposed to point to the rise of Adolf Hitler in World War II. This is just one of them. Beasts, ferocious with hunger, will swim across the rivers. Greater part of the army will be against Hitler. The Great One will cause him to be dragged in a cage of iron when the German infant observes no law. People who believe these prophecies claim the greater part of the army refers to the French and Allied forces. The German infant symbolizes both Hitler and Nazism. Since Hitler died by his own hand and wasn't captured though, it's hard to say what the cage of iron is really supposed to be. The main problem with this prophecy though is the word Hister. In one version of the prophecy it's written as Ister. It's not a misspelling of Hitler's name, nor is it meant to hint at his real name. At the time Nostradamus wrote his prophecy, Hister was another name for the lower Danube River. In fact, the seer used the same name to refer to the Danube in his 1554 almanac. Number 4. Napoleon. Several quatrains supposedly point to the rise of Napoleon. In one, 2 of its lines read, "An emperor will be born near Italy who will cost the empire dearly." Believers say this describes Napoleon because he was born on the island of Corsica, which is off the west coast of Italy. The same quatrain calls the emperor a butcher. The Napoleonic Wars caused the deaths of thousands, and some of his own supporters called him a butcher. In another quatrain is the cryptic names Po, Ne, and Oleron. When the letters are moved around, they make the name Napoleon Roy, which means Napoleon the King in French. That same quatrain refers to this person being more of fire than blood, which could point to Napoleon's success despite his commoner roots. Skeptics point out that these quatrains could refer to a number of upstart rulers though. Also, Napoleon was technically not a king, and Po, Ne, and Oleron are the names of 3 French towns. Number 3. The Great London Fire. The following quatrain supposedly predicts the Great London Fire in 1666. The blood of the just will be demanded of London, burnt by fire in the year 66. The ancient lady will fall from her high place, and many of the same sect will be killed. Out of the other prophecies of Nostradamus, this one seems the most plain. It even mentions the last 2 digits of a year. London and a fire are both mentioned specifically. The Great Fire of London started in a baker's shop on Pudding Lane. It quickly spread from there, and by the time it was over, 4/5 of London was in ruins. Though it's now viewed as an accident, people at the time blamed foreigners and then Catholics for the disaster. While the quatrain is compelling, one skeptic points out that line 2 is missing a syllable and may be corrupt. At the time the quatrain was printed, printing presses with movable type were used. Printers sometimes set the movable type as someone read the text aloud, which would have allowed for mistakes. Finally, the ancient lady falling is supposed to be a statue of the Virgin Mary falling from the steeple of St. Paul's. However, there's no evidence that any such statue even existed. Number 2. The French Revolution. From the enslaved populace, songs, chants, and demands. While princes and lords are held captive in prisons, these will in the future by headless idiots be received as divine prayers. In 1789, the French Revolution began. The French monarchy was overthrown and a republic put in its place. On its heels, though, came the Reign of Terror, leading to the deaths of thousands. Believers say the enslaved populace points to all the peasants who were starving in the streets. Princes and lords were held in prisons before being beheaded. But another quatrain reads, "Before the war comes, the great wall will fall. The king will be executed, his death coming too soon will be lamented. The guards will swim in blood, near the river Seine, the soil will be bloodied." This could easily apply to the death of the French king and the taking of the Bastille fortress. Bastille was seen as a symbol of royal power and contained a cache of weapons. However, the coming too soon part doesn't really fit, because King Louis was executed 4 years after the start of the revolution. Number 1. Donald Trump. The great, shameless, audacious baller. He will be elected governor of the army, the boldness of his contention, the bridge broken, the city faint from fear. This quatrain is worded very vaguely. So vaguely, in fact, that it could apply to just about any tyrant or controversial political figure that becomes the head of a nation. However, some tabloid and satire news sites point to this as evidence that Nostradamus saw Trump coming. The shameless, audacious baller describes Trump's communication style fairly well. As president, he is commander-in-chief, which fits as governor of the army. In another quatrain, Nostradamus talks about false trumpet concealing madness. And it doesn't take a psychic to see trumpet and think Trump. Others suggest evidence for Hillary's email scandal, as well as the division of the Democratic Party between Bernie and Hillary. They're all hinted in Nostradamus' quatrains. What do you think about the predictions of Nostradamus? Let us know in the comments below, and take care.